What a way to kickstart your weekend, football-wise. Nottingham Forest, beleaguered, but not in the drop zone yet. I don't think they'll go down, but even so, a challenge and a worry to their supporters, one of whom is beside me, John Jackson, and also Spurs, who've been up and down at times like a bride's night. He got beaten by West Ham, but then have pulled off some remarkable scorelines. So, tonight, Nottingham Forest versus Spurs. We've got a fan of each club, a super fan of each club, if you like, standing by after we get you in a Friday night for football kind of mood.
This is the Premier League, and nothing is over until it's over.
Lovely cross from Williams to the far post, and it's in from Topolo. Forest lead.
Togetherness has been right at the core of everything that we've done well over the last couple of years, and that will continue to be the case. So
there should be no pressure on him.
I know.
He's got Forest up for the first time in 23 years,
Correct.
You know what I mean?
Correct.
I think you've got one of the brightest coaches in the division, one of the brightest English coaches.
At home, they're still very hard to beat, and all the games are pretty close, so you know it's going to be a tough game.
And Morgan Gibbs White has equalised. He's volleyed it in.
No one was going through a worse struggle than we were a week ago, and we ended up winning.
Tom milks the adulation of those Spurs fans. It is Tottenham 4, Newcastle 0. It's a rout.
Spurs ain't going away. Everyone wants to hate on Spurs. We ain't going away.
Spurs are the best watch right now. You're going to get everything with Spurs.
It's Premier League football, just the way we like it on talkSPORT.
It's going to be a fascinating encounter. It's Nottingham Forest, of course, who've had their, shall we say, difficulties in recent matches, and Tottenham Hotspur, who've at times been disappointing, and other times been really, really fantastic. And now we've got them travelling to Nottingham Forest for tonight's big game. We've got it live and exclusive on talkSPORT. We've got two super fans, if you like. Callum Castell, who's a broadcaster and journalist. He's on Twitter as well, or X as it is now. You can catch him at Callum Castell, C-A-S-T-E-L, with an N on the end. And also Chris Cowden, who's been on the show many times talking about Spurs. He's the host of the Spurs Chat podcast. Guys, welcome aboard to both of you. And this is a first for me, doing the game day live build-up. You've both got names, the first and last beginning with C, so it's a double alliteration. We've got the Cowlins versus the Castells on the pitch tomorrow. Let me start with you, Callum. Welcome aboard, matey. Now, we know that he's a fantastic individual, I think. He's done wonders with Nottingham Forest. He's had challenges and mountains to climb. Do you think his time is now pretty much up, that he's got a sell-by date now stamped on his backside, maybe early next year?
It's looking that way, isn't it? I think there's been a lot of scenarios like this with him, especially last season with the collapse in form. It does seem like it's coming to a little bit of an end now. He's kind of on a one-game roll at the moment. It was 3 games. He kind of saved it with the draw against Wolves. And now, I think if we lose to Spurs, if we lose heavily especially, then his head might be on the chopping block for sure. So it does feel like there's not really much room for him at the moment to get out of it.
Except, of course, you're now looking at maybe a below-par Crystal Palace possibly drifting down the table. So, I mean, I don't think you're as threatened with relegation as the 3 teams that were promoted last season, as everybody knows. And I think there might be other contenders by the end of the season. What do you think has gone wrong then? Or what hasn't been achieved then? What haven't they built on, do you think, to lead them to this kind of current state of affairs, would you say, Callum?
I think it's difficult because the way that we got promoted, it was like we had to build a whole brand new squad. And I think he guided that really well. I know we were kind of expecting to be in trouble last season with the amount of players brought in, and we kind of was expecting that to disappear this season a little bit because we got rid of some bad players. We brought in some upgrades. I think some of the upgrades haven't been as good as we thought they might be. I think there's still injuries. We really struggled with injuries last season. It's not as bad this season, but we've lost our striker. Awani's out for 3 or 4 months, and I think no matter what manager comes in, even if Steve Cooper stays, someone else comes in, I think that is still going to be a pain point for us unless we address that in January. Losing Brennan Johnson, we thought that if we were going to sell him and then we bought Sangare as this blockbuster midfielder that we needed, that hasn't really turned out that way just yet. And still trying to find the best 11. We've had 5 players wear the captain's armband so far this season, and we've had different lineups and 7 changes against Wolves to kind of go from a 5-0 defeat to a draw. So it's just a little bit all over the place, and the squad's a bit unbalanced. And yeah, you just kind of don't know what to expect or what's coming next.
Well, let's go now. I know what's coming next. We're going to talk to Chris Cowlin from the Spurs Chat podcast. Chris, Henry Ford, the car manufacturer, once said history is bunk. So we can't place too much credit on the fact you beat them twice last season with an aggregate score of 5-1, because they did this season knock you out of the League Cup. And that was really Postecoglou's only real or first misstep. So what are your thoughts overall about the game tomorrow? I mean, they're kind of wounded, and they might be more dangerous than you'd have thought even a month ago, possibly, Nottingham Forest.
To be honest, Paul, I think this is a game that we've got to win, but we're in a really decent position at the moment. Everyone is loving life under Ange Postecoglou. It's been a really, really good 6 months so far under the new boss. But games like this at the City Ground away, with Nottingham Forest only winning 3 games so far this Premier League season, this is a game that all of us Spurs fans expect to win. But as I said, the position we're in, we're only 3 points away from the top 4, only 7 points away from top of the Premier League. We've played some super entertaining football. And at the moment, every single fan is looking forward to the next game because, of course, we haven't played European football this season. So we were out of the League Cup very early this season as well. So it's the Premier League games that we're really looking forward to. Sure. And I absolutely love Ange Postecoglou's attitude, even in his presser yesterday, saying we're not aiming for 5th. We want top 4. And
I think if you win tonight, you're going to be level with Man City, aren't you? At least until they play again, which is pretty darn good.
Yeah, and I think that is definitely the aim, Champions League football. And, the start of this season, going unbeaten in the first 10 games, there were a lot of doubters about Ange Postecoglou, a lot of doubters, even in the Tottenham fan base about the manager. And now everyone is fully on board. Everyone is loving it. And, we've had a lot of injury problems. And I think it's very, very fair to say, had we not have had these injuries to key players, we could, even be top of the league.
Well, you've got Maddison still out, I think, Bentancur, Solomon's out with a knee injury, I think Perisic is out with a knee injury, there's 2 or 3 others as well. I think Ashley Phillips is still out, isn't he, as well, and Mickey van der Ven with a hamstring.
There's 10, Paul. It's Phillips, Dyer, Lo Celso, Whiteman, Solomon, Sessegnon, Maddison, van der Ven, Bentancur and Perisic. So there's still a lot of injuries, but we've got players coming back slowly. Sarge's come back, Richarlison come back, a brace for him at the weekend would give him the world of confidence. But there's not one player who any Spurs fan could criticise this season so far, because every single player has given their absolute all.
Now, we've also got an injury problem that happened, I think, with about 10 minutes left to play at Molineux in the last game. Your centre-back, Callum, Murillo, he kind of trudged off a bit in a gingerly fashion. Do we know what the latest is with him? Is he liable to turn up for your mob tonight, do we think?
Yeah, I think Cooper was a little bit coy with the question in his presser today. I think he said we'll see, and in Steve Cooper language, I think he'll be okay. We had a lot of it last season where you'd get kind of a player would go down. We had 2 centre-backs go down in the same minute, 4 minutes in against Fulham at one point. It was ridiculous last season. It was like Spurs now, but worse. And you kind of tell when players are going to be out for a while. He didn't seem too concerned when he mentioned Murillo today, and he's been our best player so far, I would say, as well this season. And
you're without Serge Aurier, I think, tonight as well, though, aren't you?
Yeah, I mean, I think he picked up an injury, but he's a player that was really key for us last season and hasn't really been the same this season. So I don't think that's too much of a concern for us. Nico Williams was probably the best player on the pitch against Wolves, so I'm happy with Nico starting again tomorrow. But yeah, we're without Aurier and definitely without Awoniyi so far. So the injury list is nowhere near what it was last season, but without Awoniyi, it's a huge gap to fill. And Chris Wood and Origi haven't really done anything to stake a claim in the squad. I don't think we'll even start with a striker tomorrow.
Let me go back now to Chris Cowlin from the Spurs Chat podcast. Chris, what would be a successful season for Spurs this time around? What, a top 6 finish, European football? Would that do it, or do you need to win something?
Well, we've not played any European football this season, which, we're so used to playing in the Champions League and, more recently in the Europa League and the Europa Conference League. So the European football
you're right. Neither of you guys your teams have won the Europa Conference, but neither Man City, Man United, Chelsea or Arsenal. So
I thought you'd get that in. No, it's the key aim, I think, Paul, is definitely playing European football next season. But we haven't won an FA Cup since 1991, and it seems like every single time I talk to you, I talk about trophies and the lack of them. But Spurs do need to win a trophy. But Ange Postecoglou is building something very special, and hopefully he's going to be here for a number of years and build this team. And the January transfer window, I think, is very important for Spurs. But we made a number of really key signings in the summer. The window was a really decent one. But to keep getting players in of a certain quality, to win a trophy, to get back into Europe, those are certainly the aims this season.
Let's go back now to Callum Castell, from Nottingham Forest, of course. I'm a big Nottingham Forest fan and broadcaster. What do you make, Callum, of Joe Worrell not being involved at the moment, club captain? What's going on there, do we think?
Yeah, it's a difficult one, isn't it? I think it's been a little bit like that this season, where the players are either playing or they're not playing at all. Last season there was kind of a place for everyone and everyone got a bit of a chance, and I think that might be something that the manager saw as a little bit of a weakness within the squad because we've got such a big squad. And this season it's just kind of been you're either playing or you're not. I don't really know what the situation is with the manager and Worrell because they were thick as thieves and that was his captain taking him up to the Premier League, and I don't really know what has happened. It's a little bit of a thing with Worrell where the consistency hasn't really been there since we got promoted with him particularly, and it's strange because the last time we did see him was, I think it was against Chelsea, and he played extremely well and probably was the reason we beat Chelsea, and then something's happened. Well, no, actually, sorry, the last time we did see him was against Luton when we got out-muscled by Adebayo and we conceded in the last minute, so we haven't seen him since then. So that's the kind of inconsistency. I mean, he can kind of guide us to a win, and then he can be the reason that we lose. So I don't know if that's why he's been axed. I don't know if there's been an attitude problem or a disagreement. But yeah, it is really strange. I can't even begin.
Now, I think your owner, and he seems a solid chap, Evangelos Marinakis, cleared a debt of over £10 million that was hanging around the club this week. And also I'm wondering what you're going to be looking out for in the transfer window come January, because that may be a time when he's actually thinking, you know what, we are now in trouble. I'm not going to invest money. We need to start with what we've got, because if we get relegated, I don't want to be lumbered with a huge wages bill. Would that be a concern, do you think?
Yeah, a little bit, yeah, and it's trying to stay within the FFP guidelines. That's why we had to sell Brennan Johnson as well. But I think there's rumours with a centre-half, Nino, from Fluminense, which I think it looks like it's going to happen. I think with McKenna and Worrell being out of the squad, I think we will look for a centre-half. And a striker is a big one. We need to get a striker. We really do need to get one. I don't think it's really in the question to not get a striker, because I think Origi hasn't worked out. I wouldn't be surprised if we ended his loan in January. And Chris Wood's a great player. We all know him. We all know what he can bring, but we just don't play to his strengths. We need an Awoniyi type of player, a fast, strong player that can run the lines and cause problems for defences, whereas Chris Wood is just kind of there up front without any service at the moment. So like I said, I don't even think we'll start with a striker tomorrow, so that really needs addressing in January.
Going back to Chris Catlett now for the Spurs Chat podcast. Chris, when the historic West Ham defeat of Tottenham occurred, Jamie O'Hara, of course, who's normally on the sports bar, was off that night, but he was absolutely, and he wears his heart on his sleeve, former Spurs player, huge Spurs fan, and he was saying, we've got to be beating the likes of West Ham, it's a disgrace and whatever. And I'm wondering whether, if those kind of results were to continue, then the glow, that nimbus of kind of acceptance and optimism that's around Ange Postecoglou at the moment might start to disappear. Because I was surprised there wasn't more of a negative reaction from Spurs fans when you were bounced out of the League Cup.
Well, I think a lot of people were disappointed when Postecoglou made 10 changes in the League Cup because, cups are very important to Spurs, but we have been able to concentrate on the league, and I think it's been very evident that, we have not got enough depth in the Tottenham Hotspur squad right now, because you take 1, 2, 3 key players out of this team, there is a big difference. But it's fair to say as well that, during those defeats, certainly the Chelsea one, the West Ham one, and Aston Villa, West Ham and Wolves, it's fair to say that, the Spurs fans were still very positive about what Ange is doing, because, we should have won those games. So it's a matter of injuries, so many injuries in the Tottenham Hotspur team. And, Ange has been through a lot of difficulties this season, it's fair to say.
Let's go back now to Callum Castell, of course, broadcaster and huge Nottingham Forest fan. Callum, I'd like to get a prediction from you now for tonight's game, and you're allowed a couple if you like. I know you've not done this slot before on the station. I'm sure you'll be back again with us though. You're allowed one from your head and one from your heart if you like. How do you see tonight's game playing out? What's the score going to be, do you think?
I need the head and heart one, because I think it's, from the head, I think that Spurs, it sounds really negative, but I think Spurs will beat us probably 3-1. If we concede early, it's going to be a heavy defeat, but the heart says, I know that Spurs are going to score. I can't see a win, but if it's one of those City Ground nights that we had similar to last season, then I could see maybe as nicking a 2-1. But it's definitely the heart speaking more than anything. We had this kind of thing last season where we lost heavily to Leicester 4-0, and then the manager got everything tight. We got we scraped a draw against Brighton and Villa, and then we went on to beat Liverpool at the City Ground, and it was one of those that had come off of the manager being under pressure and trying to tighten everything up. And And it could happen. I probably would say that I think we'll lose, but I can, in my heart, see a special City Ground night. So maybe 2-1.
There we go, head and heart then, a very honest man indeed. Callum, you've been a great guest this morning. That was Callum Castell, then Nottingham Forest fan and also broadcaster. And if you're on the X, or as it used to be Twitter, Callum with 2 L's, Castell with an N on the end. Final prediction for you, Krista, how's it going to be? Callum saying if his heart rules the match tomorrow, it'll be 2-1 to the Forest. That's a big ask, though, for Forest.
I think my head and heart prediction, Paul, is exactly the same. I'm going to go for a 2-0 Tottenham Hotspur win. I think Cooper is under severe pressure at the moment. He's perhaps on borrowed time, and I think that, it might be gutting for the Nottingham Forest fans if Brennan Johnson suddenly gets a winner and, eventually gets Steve Cooper the sack. But I can see Spurs winning and, us trying to climb up that league table and hopefully get that top 4 finish.
Because before Postecoglou, blessed be his name everywhere but among Celtic fans, before he got the gig, wasn't Steve Cooper talked about as a possible manager at Tottenham Hotspur?
Yeah, it was one of the names rumoured. I don't think a number of fans were very happy about it. They wanted a bigger name. No disrespect to Steve Cooper at all, because he's done a fantastic job. But you don't get much time in the Premier League now, no matter what your history has been. But Spurs fans certainly wanted a bigger name. That's why it was a bit of a shock that Postecoglou came in. But he's doing a fantastic job, and long may this continue.
It's a big match. It's on tonight. Forest versus Spurs on talkSPORT, of course, live and exclusive. And that was Callum Castell, you heard. Nottingham Forest fan and broadcaster. And also our mate Chris Cowlin from the Spurs Chat podcast. We're going to meet Paul Ross and you guys on talkSPORT and on Talk Radio, where we're live till 5. It's the Paddy